Hi, and welcome to Quirky Books with Katie. Today I'm going to be doing my February wrap-up and March TBR video. So, February was a really good reading month for me. I ended up reading a total of 9 books and 2 novellas, so let's get started. The first book that I read in the month of February is Destroy Me by Tahereh Mafi, and this is the novella from the Shatter Me series, and it takes place from Warner, who is kind of the antagonist's point of view, and I gave this novella 4 out of 5 stars. I absolutely adore Warner. He's definitely, hands down, my favorite character in the series, and I really loved getting more of an insight into him and his character. I know that so many people changed their opinions of him because of this novella. The second novella that I read in the month of February was Fracture Me by Tahereh Mafi, and this is the novella from also from the Shatter Me series, in between the second and third books in the series, and I give this one 2 out of 5 stars. It focuses on Adam, who is one of the love interests in the series. I've never been a big fan of Adam, and this book just made him look like an ass. Not a fan. The first real book that I read in the month of February is Ignite Me by Tahereh Mafi. This is the third book in the Shatter Me series. I really like this series. It's about kind of this dystopian society, and the main character is a girl named Juliet, and she has a lethal touch, and throughout this series she has to learn how to deal with it in a love triangle, and I really like this book. It was definitely my favorite in the series. The main character finally steps into her own, and I really love the romance, and there was just a lot of good quotes in this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, though, because I felt like everything was wrapped up a little too nicely. Everything that I wanted to happen happened, and it just didn't feel right. The second book that I read this month is Cress by Marissa Meyer. This is the third book in the Lunar Chronicles series, which is kind of a series of retellings. This one focuses on Rapunzel, and I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. It was, for most of the month, I would have said that this was my favorite book I read this month. This book was so good. The thing with this series is it keeps getting better and better. I liked the first book, really liked the second one, and loved this one. I fell in love with the characters even more, especially Captain Thorne, and one of everyone's favorite characters even comes back in this book. I'm not going to say who, but just letting you know the ending was a major case of the feels. Next, this month I read The Longest Ride by Nicholas Sparks. This is his most recent book. I know a lot of people laugh at Nicholas Sparks, but I actually like his books. I think they're decent romances. However, I was not a big fan of this one. This one kind of takes place in multiple POVs. One is from an old man named Ira, and he's in a car accident and is stuck on the side of the road, and he's kind of reminiscing about his life with his dead wife. And the second point of view is from a girl named Sophia, and she's a college student. Now, my issue with this book is I didn't really understand how the 2 point of views went together. You don't really figure it out until the end of the book, and I just did not like it. I wasn't in love with any of the characters. I gave this book 2 out of 5 stars. If you want to check out good Nicholas Sparks, I would suggest either Safe Haven, The Rescue, or The Notebook. Obviously, I needed to be emotionally damaged this month because I reread The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer, which is just, I can't even talk about this book right now, but this book is about a girl named Mara Dyer, and the book starts off, she wakes up in the hospital, and it turns out she was in a building with her friends, and they all died, and she lived. So throughout this entire book, she thinks that she's going crazy, and you think she's going crazy too. And this book also features one of my favorite guys, Noah Shaw. So hot. And the first time I read this book, I liked it, but the second time, I just loved it. The romance and everything, and such a good book. And because I had more of a death wish, I also reread The Evolution of Mara Dyer, which is the second book in the series. This one is like 50 times better than the first one, and you just see so much character development, and the development in the romance is so good, although this ends with the mother of all cliffhanger endings. Except everyone in the fandom denies that it happened. But yeah, the ending of this book will produce lots of tears. And the last book in the series, The Retribution of Mara Dyer, was supposed to come out last November. Got pushed back to this June. Now it's coming out this November. It's going to be a lot of fun waiting for that one. The next book that I read this month was Alienated by Melissa Landers, and this was one of my most anticipated books of the year. It's a story where aliens kind of come to Earth as exchange students, and this book was kind of a disappointment for me. I just felt like the romance between the main two characters was so cliche, and it was insta-love, and just, I felt like the story itself was okay. It just could have been done so much better. And I don't really have that much of a desire to read the next book in the series either. And I gave that book 3 out of 5 stars. After that, I read The Sound of Letting Go by Stasia Ward-Kehoe. I loved that book. This book is the story of a girl named Daisy, and she has a brother that suffers from, I believe, autism. And what makes this book unique is it's told in verse, and I have a love-hate relationship with books told in verse, but this was so good. I read in an interview somewhere that it was apparently meant to kind of like mimic a jazz song, that it was supposed to have that kind of a beat, and I totally got that, and there was just so many beautiful passages from this book. I felt like even though I'm not in Daisy's situation, I could really relate to her a lot, and this book was just so beautifully written. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, though, just because of the fact that in the middle, the main character was just ticking me off, and she just kind of didn't care. But otherwise, overall, I would really recommend this book if you're looking for a way to kind of read a bit more poetry, and if you're not a fan of some of the older poets. Hands on an Arc, and that would be A Fire and Flood by Victoria Scott. And this is the story of a girl named Tella, and she is entered in a race to win a cure. Her brother is dying, and if you win this race, you kind of win a cure, which is a cure to any disease. And this book was a lot like The Hunger Games, although I did feel like the author put her own unique twist on it. That wasn't the problem I had with this book. The problem that I had with it is I didn't really care about any of the characters, which you can't do anything about that, but I ended up giving that book 3 out of 5 stars. If you're a fan of The Hunger Games or The Testing by Joelle Charbonneau, then I would definitely recommend that book. The last book that I read this month, which I actually just finished reading today, was my favorite book of the month, and that would be Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I love this book. This is a classic. It is the story of a girl named Jane Eyre. She has had such a terrible childhood, and she goes to work as a governess for a young girl named Adele, and Adele's father is, of course, the one, the only, the romantic Mr. Rochester, and they end up forming a relationship, and it's so beautiful, and this book was just so beautifully written. I was on the floor crying multiple times, not because it was sad, but because of how well it was written. I love this book to pieces, and I just cannot recommend it enough. If you're looking for a good classic, definitely read this one. So that is all the books that I read in the month of February that I actually started reading today, and that is Persuasion by Jane Austen. I'm on a bit of a classics kick, I guess, and this is a story of Anne Elliot, and I believe 8 or 9 years before this book took place, Anne was in love with a man named Frederick Wentworth, but because of his low status, her father and her friend kind of convinced her not to marry him, but 9 years later, when this book takes place, he shows up at her house to be a boarder, and they kind of have to deal with their unrequited feelings for each other. I have seen the movie of this and read a retelling, and I love this story so much, and I'm so excited to finally be able to read it. As for the rest of my TBR, I don't really have a set list because of the fact that it's my birthday this month, and I'm going to be getting probably a bunch of books for my birthday, so I want to see what I get first. And in case you're wondering, my birthday's on March 6th. People always ask. I'm not a big fan of my birthday, but whatever. So the only other book that I'm going to put on my TBR for this month is America the Beautiful, Discovering What Makes This Nation Great by Dr. Ben Carson. And most of you probably never heard of this book, but Ben Carson is a neurosurgeon. I believe he is the head of a hospital in Maryland, and he is a key part of politics. He is an important Republican speaker, and he is actually coming near me this month, so I'm going to go to one of his talks, and I'm really excited, and before I go, I want to read this book. So let me know in the comments down below if you guys have read any of these books, if you want to see any reviews, and also if you guys could do me a favor. I need to find a book to read on my birthday. I don't know if I should reread one of my favorite books or try something new, but I need an amazing book to read on my birthday. So if you have any suggestions, then let me know in the comments down below. So thank you guys for watching. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, and I'll talk to you again soon.